The schist disc was found at Saqqara in a burial chamber that no one is allowed to visit. Other goods found in the chamber were simple ropes, pottery, and grains. The disc shows clear evidence of sophisticated technology in the way it was built, and it seems out of context with the rest of the grave goods. Is this the original context for this artifact? Or is it possible that it has had a long journey over the last several millennia, and this just happened to be its final resting place? Look at this hollow stone tube. It looks as though the schist disc could fit over it. It would take sophisticated instruments to shape the tube so precisely. How did they do it?
There are pieces of stone lying around that show concave shapes that actually have the machine tooling marks on it. The evidence of the high technology is right in front of us.
Look again at these quartz objects. Aside from their unique and amazing shapes, could they have had another purpose? Today, quartz crystal is used as the basis of all kinds of modern technology. It is most commonly used in crystal oscillators. Technology uses oscillating frequencies from tiny quartz crystals that vibrate at certain speeds, with a signature vibration for each device. AM/FM radios, CDs and DVDs, computer processors and Ethernet rely on quartz crystals. Could it be that the ancients were tapping into this technology and using it on a much larger scale, in a way we can only begin to imagine? Of course, we can't say for certain, but based on what we've seen, we can theorize. Energy can be created and manipulated in many ways. It is the lifeblood of a civilization, and therefore an important resource.
Why in the Great Pyramid is there no frescoes, there's nothing, no decorations at all? Now, some people have proposed the idea that the pyramids are actually energy machines. And so I liken this to the fact, like, you wouldn't put a decoration inside your oven.
I was talking with a woman who had spent some time in the Great Pyramid, and her comment was, it felt like I was in a machine. She said it was not like this, oh, it's a wonderful shrine. She said it felt very functional. In fact, she made a comment that I actually think is probably right on. She said, I felt as if I wouldn't have wanted to be in here when it was right.
There are 100 different pyramids in China. And people in general don't know that. They're very, very large. Some of them, they're very typical. They resemble very much the pyramids of South America and Mexico. Here's a satellite picture of them. You can see them here. And interestingly, when you look very closely at the satellite pictures of the pyramids, you find that they resemble very much so what we find at Giza. This is China, this is Giza, and this is Teotihuacan off north from Mexico City. Same angles, same alignments, and all of these alignments match the stars of the belt of Orion. And that I find very interesting. Because many of the civilizations talked about these advanced beings coming from the Orion constellation and the star Sirius. And so maybe they left us evidence of their passage.
Although we've come a long way in our understanding of hieroglyphs, it is possible that many layers of meaning in the symbols remain hidden. Until now. When we approach hieroglyphics, we do so from our own point of view, and we assume that the letters of our alphabet correspond with certain hieroglyphs. There are 4,000 Egyptian hieroglyphs, but only 26 letters. In order to crack the code, we need to open our minds to different levels of meaning.
I think it's just familiarity with the way modern languages work. No one expects that a word would work differently. Our mindset is that a letter is the carrier of a phonetic value and that a word is the carrier of a concept. To understand the Egyptian words, you have to start from the approach that the letter is the carrier of the concept and the word is an extended sentence. There are nuances of meanings to the words that you don't get if you don't understand what the individual glyphs mean. For instance, there's an Egyptian word that is translated as diving duck, but when you read the glyphs it really reads pool of water, place of diving duck.
In 1822, French scholar Jean-François Champollion and British scientist Thomas Young deciphered the hieroglyphics from the Rosetta Stone. The stone was created in 196 BC. It showed the same text in hieroglyphic, Greek, and Demotic Egyptian on the one tablet. Scholars have used Champollion's translations as the basis for deciphering hieroglyphs. Could Champollion have missed subtleties, or even withheld some information? Laird Scranton is a computer software engineer who has interpreted a new aspect of hieroglyphics, the way hieroglyphic is understood.
Basically, Egyptian hieroglyphic words work more like an acronym in English, like the phrase FYI, or an acronym such as CIA or CBS, where anyone who reads English understands that you don't try to pronounce this word. This is not a word that you're going to read for its meaning in terms of the letters all put together. It's one letter at a time, stands for one word at a time, and you put the words together to get the meaning.
If we think of each hieroglyphic word as an acronym, rather than having a phonetic value, a new layer of interpretation appears. Hieroglyphs reveal in symbolic terms the way the ancient Egyptians thought the universe worked.
Once you agree that the sun glyph means what it means, and that's all traditional meanings, it's hard to argue that the word month doesn't say the moon makes an orbit. Or it's hard to argue that the word year doesn't say time of the Earth's orbit around the sun.
More than 3,000 kilometers further west, in Mali, there is a living culture with a surprisingly similar worldview to that of the ancient Egyptians. The Dogon live in Mali, largely in isolation. Studies of the Dogon culture mirror the ideology of the ancient Egyptians with uncanny precision. Laird Scranton's radical reinterpretation of Egyptian hieroglyphs came directly from his studies of Dogon cosmological symbols. Their priests use cosmological drawings, symbols they have used for thousands of years. While it is impossible to ask the ancient Egyptians to explain their beliefs, Dogon priests can explain their cosmology and how their symbols are written and pronounced.
The Dogon lay things out in such detail that it's like having the teacher's copy of the manual of the book, you're studying, with the answers to the questions written down in the back, and they flat out tell you what their symbol means and what they're, what they're trying to talk about. The general pattern I could say is that Dogon cosmology tells us how a concept should be expressed. And so when I go to Egyptian studies, I look at the Egyptian hieroglyphic dictionary or go to a book about Egyptian cosmology, sure enough, I find the same word expressing the same meanings, written with the same drawing or the same drawn character, and I say I've got a match.
How is it possible that the Dogon culture in present-day Mali is connected to the ancient Egyptians? What is the link?
the Dogon seem to have come out of a class of priests who had very specialized knowledge and who, for one reason or another, were not happy with the way things were going in Egypt and deliberately left. I would say that sounds like it's true. I can't prove it's true, but it doesn't contradict anything I know. The fact that there's a match between the Dogon drawing and the Egyptian glyph in the context of the same word, pronounced the same way, with carrying the same meanings, is just another level of validation that I'm on the right track, that these words really do correspond to each other.
Using this new interpretation of hieroglyphic, what can we learn about the ancient Egyptian view of sacred cosmology?
I had some concerns originally as I began writing some of the books about what right did I have to be revealing secrets that have been kept for 3,000 years. But when I realized that the cosmology is about science, it's about the creation of matter and things like that, and I realized how close our science is right now to being caught up with what the cosmology, the ancient cosmology, seemed to know, I realized that if anybody's going to get any benefit out of it at all, that it has to come out now. You can't wait any longer. We're only about 50 years away from discovering all the things that I found in the Dogon and Egyptian cosmology.
Is it possible the ancient Egyptian cosmology was more advanced than today's science?
I'd say there is information in the ancient cosmology that would be a benefit to the string theorists and to the modern cosmologists if they'd pay attention to it. I think the Dogon and the Egyptians explain to us how it is that a mere act of perception can cause the wave-like behavior of matter to turn into particles, which the scientists don't know. When you ask Stephen Hawking how many fundamental particles there are, he says more than 200. If you ask a Dogon priest, he says 266.
Science is on the verge of understanding things that ancient civilizations seemed to know long ago. How is this possible?
In 1972, Carl Sagan and a bunch of other astrophysicists figured, well, we've got the Arecibo radio telescope all set up now, so let's go out there and write a code and send the strongest signal ever sent into space so that we could, like, reach out to those people out there in the galaxy. Maybe they can capture this code and then send a reply. Now, that would still take hundreds and hundreds of years for that to happen, but it was worth at least doing it. So what they did is they got together and they figured, okay, what kind of simple code can we write? And obviously that's a binary code. And if you did a punch card of this code, it would look like this. And it says that we're made out of carbon. It says this is our table of elements. It says that's our DNA structure. And it says we have a small head, a big body, and we live on the third planet from our sun. And this is the technology we're sending this with, which is the symbol for a radio telescope. Well, nothing happened, obviously, because it would take hundreds of years for that to come back. But that's assuming that they're way out there. If they are close to us, orbiting, you know, in our solar system, they would have got it very, very quickly. In any case, it wasn't until 2001, I believe, that the reply came back. Did you know that we had been talked to directly? Well, right beside a radio telescope that's typically hired by SETI to listen for extraterrestrial signals, a crop circle occurred in the middle of the night, right across from the highly secured gate, which has guards and infrared cameras and everything. And this crop circle came together, this reply punch card came together with a mugshot. Right? They thought we'll give them a little bit more than a binary code. This crop circle structure is very complex, not not very easily hoaxed at all. If you look at the way the hay is woven into the field, it's very complex, very difficult to reproduce in order to get this face structure in it, viewed from above. And as well, nobody saw anything there, and you know, certainly there's security. And the reply is pretty straightforward, binary code. Now, when the binary code was decoded, it said something a little different from ours. It said that they were made out of carbon and silica. So that's interesting. There's been you know, people have been talking about becoming the crystal being, or, you know, I talk about human beings as biocrystals all the time. But what is important here is what I found interesting is that since then, this data that has come out that says that, in fact, it's not quite accurate to call ourselves carbon life, because when you look into the fluids inside cells and inside the nuclei of cells, you find that there's actually more silica than previously believed, a lot more. And actually we're more like silica and carbon combined together. So maybe they were just being more accurate than us. And here they talk about their table of elements, which is very similar. And then their DNA seems to have one more strand to it. They have a big head, a small body. They live on 3 of the planets in their solar system, and the 3rd one has 4 moons. And this is the technology that they're sending this with. And I mean, this should have made the 5 o'clock news. But then, and you know, it's interesting that the SETI comments on this was, well, you know what? The radio telescope was right beside it. So why didn't they just send a radio signal, right? And if this is true, why didn't they just send a radio signal? And my reasoning for that, my answer to that is that, well, maybe they wanted the rest of the world to have the information. Because if they would have sent the radio signal, I assure you that stuff would have not made it on the local radio station. So this is really first contact. This is them talking back. Are we listening? Well, interestingly, when I looked at the bottom of that punch card, I was very, very intrigued, going, well, what is that technology down there? I'd like to know. Maybe it works with what I'm doing. And sure enough, you see, but you can't do anything with it because it's so low resolution. The code is so simple. So I couldn't really do anything with it. And then it was found that the exact same field in England, a year prior to this card, this punch card appearing in it, across the same radio telescope, they had given us the answer to what's at the bottom of the punch card. The exact same geometry. They had given the answer before we asked the question. The same radio telescope with the same security guards and all this. They didn't see nothing. And this, again, is a beautiful fractal division of space based on tetrahedral arrays. Again, here we see singularity, boundaries formation, and then duplication of the boundaries with radial expansion in a tetrahedron array. Maybe the history of the Earth, maybe the history of our civilization is quite different than what we think it is. And if that's true, I want to know why. Because then I could modify my view of evolution to match the true reality of what happened out there, and that could change a lot of things in the way I think of myself and my ancestors and the way things have been done and my place in the universe.